Hi guys, Darth Deuce here, back on our Star Wars The Vintage Collection action figure review. Today, taking a look at a figure that I was highly anticipating for this year. It is the new Jango Fett Deluxe TVC figure. There hasn't been a ton of TVC coming out to review. I did review Count Dooku not too long ago, and now we have Jango Fett, but I don't know if it's just not a lot of crazy releases coming out right now. Not a whole lot actually interesting me. That's been really coming out on TVC lately for me. I don't know. I feel like it has been kind of slow, but we've got Jango Fett here, who did get a release way back in the first vintage collection, and I have that figure. I'll do a comparison, and I do like that figure quite a bit and have for many years, but it's definitely very dated, so I'm pretty happy to be able to get a new, completely new Jango Fett because he really needed it. Anyways, taking a look at the packaging first, he is in that deluxe style box that, on the one hand, I do really like the toy photography, but on the other hand, for people who like to collect mint on box, or mint on card rather, TVC figures, it's kind of, I feel like these boxes kind of just defeat that purpose because you can't actually see the figure. Because I could literally just, with the figure not in there, could just put this on my wall, display it, and you wouldn't know the difference. But got some pictures showing off the different accessories and features, some side art there, a rundown of the figure and everything comes with, which I do like that, and then another larger picture there. But not too much else to talk about for the packaging, so I'll get the figure and we'll take a closer look. Now we got Jango Fett here, and I'm really happy with this figure. It's pretty much what I expected. It is definitely by far the best 3 3/4 inch scale Jango Fett you can currently get. It is a fair amount of reuse, but in this case, the reuse really makes sense because his armor was pretty much the basis for a bunch of those Clone Wars Mandalorians. So he reuses a lot of those Clone Wars Mandalorian bits, but it's perfectly fine. So let's take a look. I don't have any of his extra accessories on or anything, just straight up the figure. And I think the first thing you may notice is the silver paint. The silver paint looks really good on this figure. It's nice and shiny, very metallic looking. I really love it a lot. It makes the figure really pop and look really nice. One thing from the movies, I thought the shyness of his armor was always quite distinct, and that's something that previous versions of Jango Fett have kind of failed to deliver. And maybe it's the deluxe price point that kind of adds for that extra budget maybe, but yeah, I'm really happy with the way the armor looks. It looks really good. The helmet also looks great. I believe the helmet is reused from the Death Watch Airborne Mandalorian and the Mandalorian series, Death Watch Mandalorian, which I think is fine. Looks really good. The blue looks really nice. You can move the rangefinder down, which is always an appreciated feature with these figures. The only weird thing is that he's supposed to have these 2 little triangles just above on his forehead there, in between these 2 black lines. For whatever reason, they omitted that detail. And while it's a small detail, it doesn't, not like a deal breaker or anything. It is kind of weird. Like every other Jango Fett I have has it. The Black Series one has it. The old 3 3/4 inch ones have it. Obviously, I have the Hot Toys figure, and obviously that's going to be accurate and have it. So for this figure to not have it, it's just, I don't know. It's odd. I kind of wonder if maybe they'll do a running change and fix that. I don't know. Like I said, it's not a huge deal, but it is worth mentioning. But the armor looks great. The torso and the shoulder armor is all taken from the Super Commando, and I'm sure, I think there's other figures. I think the Airborne Death Watch Mandalorian uses that same thing as well. Plenty of figures have used it, but I think that's fine. It's still accurate looking to Jango Fett's armor. The upper arms are reused from those figures, but the lower arms are not. They are new. He does have new gauntlets. Do have the cables here. They're made of a very soft, pliable plastic, so there shouldn't be any issue with these snapping and breaking, but I would still be careful with them anyways, but they are pretty movable. The one on this side is actually stiffer than these ones for some reason. It's kind of weird, so maybe a little more careful with this one. There's a fair amount of slack, so there shouldn't be too much issue, but yeah, be careful with that. And the hands, both are trigger finger hands. Of course, these are dual-wielding pistols. The belt piece here and the groin piece is new. The holsters look good, and I like that the holsters have like the proper plastic strap that are actually part of the holster mold. On the old Jango Fett, this strap was just a molded, painted part on the leg. It wasn't a part of the holster mold, and it wasn't attached to it. And while it might slightly limit articulation, I just think this looks so much better. The plate armor looks good. The upper legs, I do believe, are new. And that includes the knees. They are new as well. And then I think the lower legs and feet are reuse. But it all looks really good. I'm pretty happy with it. One thing I will mention though, and it's just an issue with all the Mandalorians that use this these feet mold. I don't know why, but for whatever reason with this mold, and it's this issue with the Black Series figure too, is they like to, for whatever reason, make these feet maybe a little too small and a little too narrow, and it does make them a little annoying to stand. It's not too bad, but sometimes you gotta futz with it a bit to get them to stand properly. Well, I didn't have an issue here, but I also don't have his jetpack or any accessories on him. But yeah, pretty happy how this guy looks. I mean, I just can't get over how good the silver looks, honestly. It's just such an upgrade just for that. Articulation-wise, if you have any of the previous Mandalorian figures, you pretty much know what you're getting into. But it does have a dumbbell joint at the neck, but there isn't actually a ton of articulation there. There's plenty of rotation. Can get a bit of pivot. He looks down a little bit. Do wish he had more up movement so you could get better jetpack flying poses. Shoulders have a lot of range of movement, and the shoulder pads are attached via soft plastic, so they get right out of the way. Single hinges at the elbows that do bend past 90, so that's good. A swivel cut at the gauntlet, which is nice. Swivels at the wrist, as well as the up and down hinge at each wrist, which is great for pistol poses, so that's awesome. Torso joint crunches forward, not really that much, honestly. Goes back a bit, pivots and rotates. Ball joint hip goes out an okay amount. Doesn't really go back. He does do like a pretty close to a full split though. That's pretty nice. Swivel cuts at the thigh, which only move just a little bit. The holsters do kind of get in the way of that, but it's not a big deal. Single hinges at the knees that go about 90, and then hinges at the ankles that go up. They go down a lot, and then they have rockers for pivot. So great articulation. Definitely the best articulated Jango Fett figure at this scale by a pretty large margin. So yeah, really great to have him with the new articulation scheme. In terms of accessories, it does come with a decent amount of accessories. He is a deluxe, but not as many accessories I think maybe some people would expect. But I guess first off, he does come with his pistols. You get obviously two. These are new sculpt, I do believe. I do wish they had paint though. They're just cast in this gray plastic. Painted even just silver, but silver with some gray detailing I think would have been really nice, especially for deluxe. I suppose I'd rather the figure be well painted than the accessories, but ideally I'd like both. But you can have him grip the pistols perfectly fine, no real issue there. And then they also slot into the holsters nice and securely, like so. So there's no problem there. That's pretty good. Of course, he does have to come with a jetpack. This is just reuse from the Clone Wars Mandalorians we've gotten, which is fine. It's, I think, still pretty accurate. But a lot of nice paint went into this jetpack. There's quite a bit of paint apps on here. Do kind of wish the missile was removable, but I kind of like that feature, even though it's honestly kind of pointless at the end of the day because there's not really any way to actually display it firing. But you do also get the two thruster effects for the jetpack that we usually get with deluxe Mandalorian releases. And those go in, and that looks pretty good. And you can put that on him. And he's got the effect parts there. I do like the effect parts of the jetpack. I just wish there was like proper just flight stands you could get for 3 1/4 inch. And I guess maybe there are, but you know, like you can get display stands from Hasbro and whatnot, but they're technically meant for 6-inch scale figures and they're too big. I wish there was smaller flight stands you could get for 3 1/4 inch Star Wars figures. Because I would definitely consider getting some of them for some of my Mandalorians. But still nice to get the effect parts anyways. They're still useful. You do get a swappable head sculpt instead of a removable helmet like they've done in the past. You can swap the head sculpt, so you pop the head off. And then you do get an unmasked Jango Fett head. He actually comes packed with the helmet off, with the unhelmeted head on. And this looks pretty good. I actually don't know if this is a new sculpt or not. It might be reused from a Clone Trooper sculpt. I think it's new, because I think the hair is a bit different. But it looks good. He's got all the scars kind of printed on there. That looks nice. I do wish maybe his eyes, I don't know, maybe he looks a little sterner maybe. I think that would be kind of nice. He's got a pretty neutral sculpt here. It would have been nice if he looked a little meaner maybe. You know, it is Jango Fett. Best bounty hunter in the galaxy. It would have been kind of nice, but not a big deal. they swap on. The first time it was kind of like tight to get the helmeted head sculpt on, but once you do it once, it's a lot easier. And then lastly, you do get a flamethrower effect piece for his gauntlet here. So you do have a hole on the gauntlet, and you can plug that in. And that looks really cool. The only thing I'll say about this is that I am curious how this will look if you decide to display him with the flamethrower effect for long periods of time. What often happens, and it has happened with other figures I have, is when they come with these flamethrower effects, you've got this heavier, bulkier front, but then you've got a pretty thin end, obviously, and then they're usually made of a somewhat softer plastic. And then what ends up happening is that the weight drags, and gravity and weight drags down this, so it eventually just kind of just warps and looks really bad. My prototype or McQuarrie concept Boba Fett had has a flamethrower effect piece that works very similar to this figure, and every time it just droops. It looks kind of bad. This one seems maybe to hold up a little better, but I haven't displayed them like for extended periods of time, past like maybe an hour or two with this on. So it's hard to say how this will hold up, but it is still cool for toy photography and all that. It's cool to have this accessory, or for play, whatever. But that's all the accessories, and it's a pretty good spread of accessories, but he does feel like he's missing some stuff. The original TVC release came with his soft goods poncho that I think is from deleted scenes, and he also came with his headgear from when he's in the Slave 1 cockpit. It would have been cool to get those accessories, as well as I need another jetpack to have his Camino jetpack. I think that would have been nice. I'm not too worried about it because, if I'm being honest, I would never display this figure with the poncho or the headgear anyways, but it still would have been nice for them to be included. But the figure is actually cheaper than some previous deluxes. It seems maybe Hasbro's maybe shifting their deluxe prices a bit, which is nice. In Canada, I don't know the United States prices or conversions, but in Canada, up until recently, deluxe figures were at normal retail price, $42.99 before tax, which is absolutely absurd, but that's what it was. And this figure was $35.99, I think, or maybe $34.99, something like that. So it was like $6-7 cheaper, which is good. I definitely like the standard retail price of this figure more than previous deluxes, and I know that the upcoming Rebel Zeb is going to be of a similar price as well. I think the same price, that cheaper price, so that's good to see. It's still worth that price. It's a stretch, but it is a price I was much more willing to spend right away at retail than other figures. Like a lot of other deluxe figures, especially that Sabine, I waited for that to go on sale and I got it for like 50% off. But this one, it wasn't as hard of a pill to swallow, so I think that's worth mentioning. But I think to wrap it all up, we'll do some quick comparison here. I guess first off, just for fun, here he is with the recent Attack of the Clones Count Dooku. They go pretty well together. I like how they look. Definitely nice to see Attack of the Clones get some, I think, much needed love from TVC. Here he is with a figure he shares a lot of sculpt with. This is the Clone Wars TVC Super Commando from a couple of years back now, I think, which I still absolutely love. And you can definitely see the similarities, but it works pretty good. They really nailed it with this figure, so I'm perfectly happy with them reusing it. For fun, here he is with the Black Series Gaming Grace Jango Fett from a few years ago. I actually prefer the head sculpt and face print on the Black Series one. I think it looks a bit cooler, looks a little better. But outside of that, the new 3 3/4" one is the winner in pretty much every other respect. But I like having them both. And then lastly, probably the biggest comparison is with the old TVC figure. And you can see it's a pretty night and day difference. You can tell right off the bat with the silver. The silver is so much nicer on the new figure. Even the blues and the other colors, I think, are so much nicer on the new figure. The old figure didn't look bad, but it's just such a flat silver. The new one looks so much better. I think the proportions look better on the new one. This one kind of just weird. The holster waist piece was kind of weird on this one. The articulation's way better on this figure. This guy didn't have like wrist articulation, doesn't have ball joint hips, no ankle rockers. This figure is honestly pretty limited in stuff you can do with it. And obviously the helmet sculpts are night and day, but you can see the thing with the triangles. They even sculpted the triangles on the old one. But yeah, the new one should have the triangles. I don't know why he doesn't. But aside from that, the new one is a definite upgrade in shape. The shape on this one is just so weird. And you can see the different jetpacks as well. This one has the Camino one. This one's, I think, specifically based on the Camino appearance. This one is technically specifically based on his Geonosis appearance, to be fair. This one did have the removable helmet and not the interchangeable head. And for its time, this head sculpt wasn't bad, but, you know, it's, let me see. The new one is definitely a lot better. But a cool thing that you can actually do is you can pop off the old one, and you can actually sit the new one on the old body, and it actually looks pretty good. I don't push it down all the way because I don't want to stretch out the ball joint a hole on the head sculpt too much, but you can put it on. You don't have to push it in too far, and it stays on nice and secure. It's not going to fall off, and you can actually display it with this. So what I'm actually going to end up doing is probably going to display this Jango Fett with the helmet on, and then I'm going to swap out and display this old figure with the poncho and with the new head sculpt. And you can actually fit the old figure's headset actually fits on the new figure's head sculpt as well. So that's probably how I'm going to display this one. Yeah. Overall, I think this new Jango Fett is definitely an absolute upgrade to previous Jango Fett figures. If you don't already have a 3 3/4 Jango Fett, this is definitely the one to get. And even if you have old Jango Fett figures like this one, like this was a good figure for its time, but it's worth the upgrade. I would definitely recommend upgrading. Because this one is just, yeah, it's just so much better, honestly. Like this one's not bad, but this one is just, this is Jango, this is the cooler Jango. And yeah, definitely one of my favorites 3 3/4 Star Wars releases from this year, which isn't saying much because I don't even know if I've picked up another TVC figure that came out this year besides Jango or Count Dooku, but still, very cool figure, very happy with it, and I highly recommend picking it up. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next video. May the Force be with you.